Too often we give too much too soon, hoping someone will see our worth, appreciate our presence, or reciprocate our energy. But here's the truth. People only value what they think they can lose. If you keep showing up for people who wouldn't even notice, if you stopped, you're teaching them not to value you. If you always say yes when your heart says no, you're making it easy for them to take you for granted. You were not born to beg for time, love, or respect. You were born to radiate so brightly that people realize you're not just a part of their life. You're a blessing in it. Knowing your worth isn't arrogance. It's clarity. It's the quiet, unshakable understanding that you don't have to shrink yourself to be accepted, loved, or noticed. It's the difference between settling for crumbs and demanding a seat at the table, not out of entitlement, but because you know what you bring to it. So many people walk through life, adjusting themselves to fit into places that were never built for them. They tolerate disrespect. They accept bare minimum effort, and they make excuses for people who never had the intention of meeting them halfway. All because somewhere deep down, they believe that's the best they can get. But when you truly know your worth, that mindset dies. Knowing your worth means recognizing that your time is valuable, your energy is sacred, and your presence is a gift. It means understanding that not everyone is meant to walk with you, and that's okay. You stop chasing validation and start attracting alignment. You no longer beg to be chosen because you realize you are the choice. You are not an option. You are not a placeholder until something better comes along. You are not someone people settle for. You are someone they rise to meet. And the beautiful thing about knowing your worth, it changes the way you move. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop tolerating inconsistency. You stop being afraid of being alone, because you'd rather be by yourself than surrounded by people who make you feel invisible. You start investing in yourself. Your peace becomes a priority. You begin to pour your love and loyalty into people who don't just tolerate your presence. They celebrate it. You don't just wait to be appreciated. You expect it, not because you're demanding or difficult, but because you've done the work. You've grown. You've healed. You've fought to be where you are. And you've realized that anyone who doesn't see your value isn't meant to hold space in your life. Love, energy, effort, they're not infinite resources. You can only give so much before you start to feel the weight of imbalance. And the truth is, one of the most painful lessons in life is realizing how many people are comfortable receiving from you without ever planning to give back. There's a difference between being generous and being used, between being loyal and being taken for granted. And often the line gets blurry, not because you don't know better, but because you care deeply. You want to be there. You want to support. You want to pour into the people you love. But love isn't just about giving endlessly. It's about mutual exchange, mutual respect, and mutual effort. When you're always the one checking in, always the one planning, always the one adjusting, take a step back and ask yourself, is it really love if I'm doing all the heavy lifting? Because when someone truly values you, you won't have to keep proving your place in their life. You won't have to beg for their attention, their time, or their effort. They'll show up because they want to, not because you reminded them to. Overextending becomes a habit. When you think love means sacrificing yourself. When you believe that if you just give a little more, they'll finally see your worth. But the truth is, the right people don't need convincing. The right people match your energy. They notice when you're quiet. They reach out when you're distant. They show up consistently, intentionally, and without being asked, because they see your presence as a privilege, not a convenience. And the danger of overextending, it drains you. It empties your cup while filling theirs. And before you know it, you're tired, frustrated, and wondering why you feel so invisible in a relationship you've given everything to. That's the cost of constantly stretching yourself to make others comfortable. You lose sight of your own needs in the process. You have to ask yourself, if I stopped reaching out, would the connection survive? If I stopped overcompensating, would the bond still exist? Because if your presence in someone's life depends solely on your effort, that's not love. That's a one-sided transaction dressed in emotional attachment. Boundaries are not walls, they're bridges. They don't exist to push people away, but to protect your peace, your energy, and your identity. Setting boundaries is one of the highest forms of self-respect. It's standing in front of the world and saying, "This is who I am, this is what I need, and this is what I will no longer accept." But the truth is, most people are not used to you choosing yourself. They're used to the version of you who says yes, even when it's inconvenient. The one who stays silent to keep the peace. The one who bends so much to accommodate others that you forget what it feels like to stand tall in your own truth. And when you start building boundaries, the people who benefited from your lack of them will be the first to protest. That's why it's not enough to set boundaries. You have to enforce them. Because a boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion, and suggestions don't protect you. You can't just say, "I don't tolerate disrespect," and then stay silent when it happens. You can't say, "I need space," and then allow someone to violate it repeatedly without consequence. Enforcement is where your power lies. That's where the shift happens. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. Every time you reinforce one, you're telling the world, "I am no longer available for behavior that drains me, disrespects me, or disregards my worth." You're showing people that your time is not unlimited, that your emotions are not a playground, that your love is not unconditional when it comes at the cost of your well-being. And yes, enforcing boundaries can feel lonely at first, especially if you're used to being the fixer, the pleaser, the one who always makes it work. But that temporary discomfort is nothing compared to the long-term pain of continuously betraying yourself just to keep others comfortable. Because here's the truth. Not everyone will like the version of you that finally puts yourself first. Not everyone will respect the line you draw, especially if they're used to crossing it without consequence. But those who truly love and respect you, they won't be offended by your boundaries. They'll be grateful for your honesty. They'll adjust, not resist. They'll meet you where you are, not where it's convenient for them. There's a kind of silence that speaks louder than shouting. A silence that doesn't beg to be heard, because it already says everything. It's the kind of silence that follows disappointment, that lingers after being taken for granted, that settles in when you finally said enough without saying a word. We live in a world where everyone wants to be heard, to explain, to prove a point, to defend their side of the story. But sometimes, silence becomes your greatest strength. It's not about giving someone the silent treatment. It's about choosing peace over pettiness. It's about knowing that your energy is too valuable to be spent trying to convince someone of your worth. It's the moment when you realize, I don't need to argue for my place in someone's life. I just need to step back and let my absence say what my words no longer can. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is restraint. It's control. It's power. It's choosing to respond with dignity instead of desperation. It's the quiet refusal to engage in games, to beg for clarity, or to keep repeating yourself to someone who was never really listening in the first place. When you've explained yourself over and over, when your boundaries have been crossed too many times, when you've expressed your needs only to be met with excuses or empty apologies, silence becomes your answer. It becomes a mirror, forcing the other person to sit with their actions without the distraction of your voice, trying to fix what they keep breaking. And here's what people forget. Silence creates space. Space for truth to reveal itself. Space for people to show you what they'll do when your voice is no longer there to guide them. Some will realize what they've lost. Some won't notice at all. Either way, your silence will always tell the truth louder than any forced conversation ever could. Because sometimes, walking away quietly hurts more than staying and yelling ever would. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing. To preserve your dignity, your peace, and your self-worth. To let the void you leave behind echo louder than any speech, any text, any confrontation could. One of the most powerful things you'll ever do is learn how to walk away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in peace, with your head high and your heart intact. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally cared enough about yourself to stop accepting less than you deserve. Too often, we hold on to people, to situations, to relationships that drained us long before they ever fed us. Why? Because the idea of leaving feels scarier than the reality of staying stuck. We convince ourselves that things might change, that maybe they'll finally understand, that maybe we can love someone into becoming who we need them to be. But the truth is, you can't heal by staying in the place that hurt you. You have to become so rooted in your self-worth that leaving no longer feels like losing. It feels like reclaiming. It feels like freedom. You stop seeing walking away as giving up, and you start seeing it as choosing yourself. That's not weakness, that's growth. That's self-awareness. That's strength in its purest form. Being comfortable walking away means not settling for half love, mixed signals, or emotional breadcrumbs. It means you no longer stay in rooms where you feel small, or in conversations where you're constantly misunderstood, or in relationships where your needs are an afterthought. You no longer stay where you have to beg to be seen, or where your presence feels like a burden instead of a blessing. It also means detaching from the illusion of potential, because potential doesn't build healthy connections. Action does. Consistency does. Effort does. And if someone isn't showing up for you the way you show up for them, you have every right to step away. Not to teach them a lesson, but to teach yourself that you will never again abandon your peace for someone else's comfort. The moment you become comfortable walking away, you stop operating from fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of what people might say. Instead, you start moving from faith in yourself, in your path, and in the belief that what's meant for you will never require you to beg, chase, or break yourself to keep it. There comes a point in your journey where begging just doesn't fit anymore. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you've grown into someone who knows that your energy is far too valuable to be spent chasing people who don't recognize your light. When you beg for attention, validation, love, or commitment, you're placing your worth in someone else's hands, hoping they'll treat it with care. But here's the truth. What you beg for can never be sustained, because anything that doesn't come from a place of mutual desire will always feel forced. It'll always feel like you're trying to convince someone to see you, hear you, choose you, when they already made it clear they weren't ready to. But when you elevate instead of beg, you change the entire dynamic. You stop trying to lower yourself to meet people where they're comfortable, and you start rising into the version of you that no longer accepts half love or emotional scraps. You stop trying to earn a place in hearts that don't have room for you, and instead you focus on becoming someone who doesn't need to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. Elevation is silent. It's powerful. It's you working on your mind, your peace, your growth, your goals. Not to make them regret losing you, but to make you proud of how far you've come. It's removing yourself from environments that shrink you. It's building a life so full of love, purpose, and clarity that you no longer need external approval to feel whole. And let's be honest, some people will only respect you when you stop trying to convince them. When you no longer argue for your place. When you no longer respond to mixed signals with consistent effort. When you no longer make excuses for why they couldn't show up for you the way you needed. That's when they start to feel your absence. That's when your elevation becomes the loudest statement you'll ever make. You don't need to scream your worth at someone who's committed to misunderstanding. You don't have to beg someone to act right when you can just step into spaces where respect is a given, not a request. Because the moment you stop begging and start elevating, something shifts. You begin attracting people, situations, and opportunities that match your frequency, not your wounds. Your presence is more powerful than you think. It's not just about being in the room. It's about what shifts when you enter it. It's the peace you bring, the energy you carry, the way people feel safer, stronger, or more understood just by being around you. And when you fully step into your power, you realize you don't need to prove anything to anyone. All you need to do is be who you are. unapologetically, and let that speak for itself. Making your presence impactful isn't about being loud or always needing attention. It's about living in such alignment with your values, your strength, and your heart that the absence of you feels like something important is missing. It's when people begin to realize that not everyone brings calm when things fall apart. Not everyone listens with genuine care. Not everyone holds space the way you do. Not everyone loves without conditions or supports without needing applause. And that's the kind of energy you cultivate, not by forcing connection, but by showing up consistently as someone who makes others feel seen, heard, and safe. You become the person who inspires, who uplifts, who brings clarity into chaos. The one who makes it easier to breathe. The one who leads with integrity, depth, and intention. That kind of presence can't be ignored. It leaves a mark. It lingers. So when someone loses you, when they walk away, take you for granted, or think you'll always be yours, the weight of that loss won't come from your silence, your anger, or your words. It will come from the sudden realization of what's missing. The stillness where your support once lived. The emptiness where your loyalty once stood. The lack of warmth where your love used to flow freely. Because the truth is, anyone can leave an impression, but very few leave an impact. Very few people show up in a way that makes others rethink how they love, how they lead, and how they show up in return. That's the kind of person you become when you stop chasing validation and start nurturing your own greatness. When you decide to be the type of presence that people can feel, even in your absence. It's not about revenge. It's not about being missed out of pride or ego. It's about understanding your power, your light, your worth, and letting theirs speak louder than any argument, any explanation, or any final word.